I've always been curious about that thing folks call gut instinct. You know the way people talk about it, like they just knew something was off, but went ahead and ignored it anyway. I used to think that was just talk, but now I get it. Because looking back, my gut had been trying to slap some sense into me for months before the wedding. It was practically screaming that something wasn't right between Sabrina, my fiancée at the time, and my best friend, Derek. The way they acted around each other, it felt too close for comfort. Closer than what you'd expect from a best man and a bride-to-be. But I had my hands full. I was grinding away at a demanding job in software consulting, swamped with organizing the wedding Sabrina dreamed of, and doing everything I could to stay on the good side of her pushy parents, Douglas and Carolyn Langford. Even when I caught a weird feeling in my chest watching Sabrina and Derek laughing off to the side, or saw Derek looking at her just a little too long, I didn't have in me to chase down those suspicions. I was plain worn out. Between 12-hour workdays and the never-ending wedding errands, I barely had time to breathe. My own folks, sweet as they were, couldn't really help. They didn't have the money or the know-how to navigate the kind of big, flashy wedding Sabrina and her mom insisted on. So the pressure fell squarely on me, juggling 100 things at once. Still, the signs were there. Like how Sabrina and Derek texted constantly, way more than you'd expect from a fiancé and a best friend. I'd catch them chuckling at their phones or hinting at inside jokes they wouldn't explain. Anytime I asked what was so funny, I'd get a shrug or some brush off like just a meme or you wouldn't get it. Always something vague. Derek and I went way back. College roommates, late-night study sessions, covering for each other when life got messy. I thought of him like a brother. Maybe that's why I kept swallowing down the doubts. I just couldn't picture him stabbing me in the back like that. He was my best man after all. I told myself, he's loyal, he's got my back. Right? Now Sabrina, she came from a much fancier world than I did. Her family, the Langford, were practically local royalty. Her dad, Douglas, had his fingers in local politics, and her mom, Carolyn, acted like she ran high society itself, showing up to every gala and charity event with a phony smile and a sharp tongue. When I proposed, they accepted me, but not without reminding me that I was lucky to be marrying into their family. They never outright said I wasn't good enough, but they made it clear I was marrying up. The way they handled the wedding planning said it all. They promised to split the costs 50-50, but then pushed for this over-the-top venue, expensive flower arrangements, a live string quartet, and a guest list that ballooned to nearly 300 people. My dad, a retired high school football coach, and my mom, a nurse on the edge of retirement, had to dig into their savings just to keep up with their half. And every time I tried to pump the brakes or set some limits, Carolyn would hit me with something like, "We can't cut corners with a Langford," or, "What will people say if your bride looks cheap on her big day?" That kind of talk grated on me, but Sabrina usually took their side. She'd wave it off with a smile, saying, "Let them have their fun. We're only doing this once, right?" Yeah, famous last words. Just a week before the big day, Derek, grinning like he was doing me a favor, offered to handle all the hotel bookings for out-of-town guests. "You've got enough going on," he said, holding up his phone to show the reservations. It reminded me of our college days, leaning on each other to get stuff done. I thanked him, feeling like maybe I could relax for a second. The night before the wedding, both our families gathered at the fancy venue for the rehearsal dinner. Sabrina wore this off-white dress that might as well have been a wedding gown, drifting around the room, chatting with her dad's side of the family, most of whom barely even looked my way. My parents stood off to the side, clearly out of place in all that luxury. Derek flashed me a few thumbs-ups from across the room, like everything was smooth. After the practice run, we all moved into the lounge for a little after-party. Everyone seemed in good spirits, laughing and sipping drinks, until I noticed Sabrina had disappeared. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. One of the bridesmaids casually mentioned that she stepped outside to get some air, said she felt overwhelmed. I figured, fair enough. It was the night before the wedding. Maybe she just needed to breathe. But then time kept ticking, and not long after, I realized Derek was gone too. At first, I didn't think too much of it. Maybe Derek had just stepped out to grab more champagne or help someone out. Something harmless. But this little voice in the back of my mind kept nudging me, telling me to go look for him and her. 30 minutes ticked by. Then an hour. The curiosity started burning a hole in my chest. I pulled out my phone, thinking maybe they'd posted something, anything. I scrolled through social media, just poking around, not really expecting to find much. But then I landed on Sabrina's Instagram. She must have posted something by accident. A short story clip that vanished almost immediately after it went up. But even though she deleted it, it was too late. The damage was already done. In those few seconds, I saw enough. A hotel hallway, fancy patterned carpet, a partial room number. My stomach dropped. That hallway wasn't from the wedding venue. Not even close. This was somewhere else entirely. A different building, different hotel. I felt my chest tighten like a fist had gripped my heart. That gut instinct I'd buried deep came roaring back to life. I had to go see for myself. No more guessing. No more hoping I was wrong. I jumped in the car and drove straight toward the hotel district, my brain scrambling for explanations the whole way. Maybe she went to visit a friend who flew in late. Maybe Derek was just doing her a favor, dropping something off. But another part of me, one that had finally woken up for good, kept saying, what if it's real? What if they're actually in there together? That thought rattled me. I remember Derek had made some hotel bookings recently for our out-of-town guests, but I didn't know which hotels or rooms. So I parked outside one of the nicer boutique hotels in the area, stepped into the lobby, and played it cool. I tried to see if anyone at the front desk recognized me, maybe from earlier visits or from Derek's guest list. Honestly, I didn't have much of a plan, but right then, fate gave me a clue. Derek's Chevy was sitting right there near the entrance. If that wasn't a giant flashing sign, I didn't know what was. I headed up to the 5th floor, my heart pounding like a drum. I scanned each door as I walked, matching numbers to the little glimpse I'd caught in that video. Room 546. 547. I stopped cold. Every step echoed through the hallway. The windows showed nothing but darkness outside, while the bright overhead lights made me feel exposed, like I was standing on stage before a show I didn't want to see. Still, I didn't want to burst in. Not yet. Some part of me needed proof, undeniable, crystal-clear proof, so I'd never second-guess myself later. I crept closer to the door, pressed my ear against it. At first, it was quiet. My pulse thundered in my ears as I gently tested the handle. To my shock, the door wasn't bolted from the inside, just locked electronically. That's when I remembered something from earlier that month. Derek had given me a master key card, said it was in case any of the guest rooms had issues during the wedding. Just in case, he told me. The irony hit me hard. I reached into my pocket, slid the card into the slot, and held my breath. The light blinked green. The lock clicked open with a soft sound. They handed me the very key to their own downfall, I thought, feeling sick to my stomach. I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside without making a sound. The room was dim, just a soft amber glow from a nearby lamp throwing shadows across the walls. I heard murmurs, low, private, and my blood started to boil. There they were, on the king-size bed, tangled up together. Sabrina's hair was a mess, her bare body stretched across the bedding. Derek hovered over her, speaking quietly. I couldn't hear every word, but the tone and her soft little giggle told me all I needed. That image hit me like a punch to the chest. Rage flared so hard my fists clenched on instinct. I wanted to shout, to rip him off her, to let out all the pain and betrayal I felt in that moment. But something deep inside held me back. A voice telling me, don't make a scene. Get the evidence. The wedding was just hours away. I realized then that I wanted them to stand up there at the altar with me, smiling, thinking they'd pulled it off. I wanted to blow it all up in front of everyone. I wanted them humiliated the way I'd just been. With shaking fingers, I pulled out my phone, flipped it to video mode, and zoomed in. I hovered over the record button, my breath shallow. Yes, I thought. Let's make sure they can never deny this. I started filming, just a few seconds, long enough to catch their faces, the way Derek leaned toward her, the time and date stamped clearly in the corner. They didn't hear me. They didn't even know I was there. I caught Derek whispering something about how they'd never get caught. Then Sabrina let out another quiet laugh. The camera caught it all. It was perfect, and it made my stomach turn. My whole body trembled with fury, but I forced myself to stay silent. Not yet. Now's not the time. I repeated those words over and over in my head, just to keep myself from losing it. Once I had enough, I slowly backed up, making sure to keep the phone aimed so the mic would catch everything. I slipped out the door and closed it just as quietly as I'd come in. I bolted, practically sprinted down the hallway, toward the elevator like I was running from something explosive, because that's exactly what it felt like. Like I had a bomb strapped to me, set to go off the next day. The moment I stepped outside, the cold night air hit me in the face like a slap, snapping me back to reality. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like I just finished a dead sprint. Anger surged through me in waves, threatening to boil over into a full-on breakdown. I could feel the phone in my hand, slick with sweat, holding the video that confirmed what I'd feared. The people I trusted most had betrayed me in the worst way. I needed air, space, something to slow my brain down. So I took a few minutes to breathe, just sat there trying to get control of myself. Eventually, I got in my car and drove with no real destination, just aimlessly weaving through empty roads until I spotted a 24-hour diner. I pulled in, found a beat-up booth in the corner, and pulled out my phone. I watched the video again, this time in private. No interruptions. No questions. Just me and the cold, hard truth staring back at me. There was no denying what I saw. No explaining it away. That's when the idea began to take shape. Call it rage, call it clarity, whatever it was, it lit a fuse in my mind. If they were going to humiliate me like that, then they were going to get it back. I wasn't about to let them be the only ones laughing. I didn't sleep. Not a second. By 5 in the morning, I was buzzing on 3 cups of bad diner coffee, a head full of thoughts and a growing plan. I pulled out a napkin and started jotting notes, timing, cues, what I need to say. I kept running through how I'd gain access to the mic, the projector, all of it. Luckily, our wedding venue had top-tier AV gear. We were supposed to play this sweet little slideshow showing our childhood photos and memories from our time together. I'd spend hours picking out the perfect ones, Sabrina's baby pictures, embarrassing high school photos of me, beach selfies, all of it. But now, all of that could be replaced in a heartbeat. I knew the system well enough to hijack it with a thumb drive, my phone, anything really. I'll be honest, a small part of me hesitated. I mean, technically I'd be showing a piece of a private moment, and yet it was intimate. But then I thought about the betrayal. What they'd done to me the night before our wedding. That kind of cruelty? It earned the fallout. At least, that's how I justified it to myself. Actions have consequences. By 6:30 a.m., I was heading back to the apartment Sabrina and I had shared for nearly a year. No surprise, she still wasn't home. If she was trying to play it cool, maybe she planned to sneak in right before dawn and act like she'd stayed with a friend, just crashed after too much wine. That was her usual fallback. But when I opened the front door, everything was untouched. Lights off, bedroom exactly how we left it. I stepped into the bedroom that used to feel like ours, warm and familiar. Now it felt like I was walking into a stranger's place. Her phone charger was still sitting on the nightstand, and the little ring box I'd given her was right there on the dresser, mocking me. The heartbreak hit hard, but the anger hit harder. She tossed everything we had aside for one night with my best friend. I put my phone on silent and tried to rest, just for an hour or two. But my thoughts wouldn't quit spinning. Around 8 a.m., I finally heard the door unlock with a soft beep. She was back. I kept my eyes shut and pretended to still be asleep, just to see what she'd do. Sure enough, her footsteps were soft, careful, like she didn't want to wake me up and face questions about where she'd been. She didn't even bother peeking into the bedroom. I heard her quietly slip into the guest room, probably to fix herself up and cover her tracks. About 30 minutes later, I got up and walked out, putting on a show like everything was perfectly normal. I yawned like I'd just woken up from a peaceful night. She was sitting at the kitchen island, hair brushed, dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking like she hadn't just wrecked my world. She gave me a weak smile. "Morning, babe," she said. "I crashed at a friend's last night. Had a little too much wine at the rehearsal dinner. You know how it goes?" I smiled back, playing my part. Meanwhile, my brain was replaying every second of that video on a loop. "Must have been some party," I said smoothly. "Glad you're okay." I caught her eyes flicker, like she was trying to read me. Was I suspicious? Did I know? But my face didn't give her anything. Just calm acceptance. Exactly what I wanted. I needed her to believe she'd gotten away with it. I just had to keep the mask on for a few more hours. The wedding was scheduled for noon at the Oakridge Hall. This big, fancy venue picked mainly for its prestige. My parents showed up around 10, cheerful and completely unaware of what was about to unfold. I greeted them with smiles that didn't quite reach my eyes. My mom looked beautiful in her pastel dress, grinning like she was about to witness the happiest day of my life. My dad gave me a proud pat on the back, probably thinking of the little kid I used to be. I forced out a smile and told them I had to finish setting up the audiovisual stuff. "I'll see you soon," I said. Meanwhile, Sabrina and her bridesmaids were upstairs, fussing with hair and makeup like nothing in the world was wrong. Derek was probably off in the groomsmen's suite, but I had zero plans to go looking for him. Let him think I was still clueless. I quietly made my way into the AV booth overlooking the ballroom. Rick, the tech guy, was testing the projector and mic setup. He turned to a co-worker and said, "This is the groom, Jake. He's got a little something extra he wants to show, right?" "Yeah," I said with a casual smile, playing it cool. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the flash drive. Got a surprise video. Instead of the typical slideshow, I'm thinking of going with something a little more dramatic. Rick laughed. "Hey, it's your day, man. Just let me know when to switch the files." I gave the flash drive a tap. "I'll give you a signal. Maybe I'll say, roll it." He grinned. "Got it." A tiny flicker of guilt crept in, but I shoved it down. This was their mess. I was just returning the favor. The ceremony was set to start right at noon, inside the grand ballroom. Massive ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and rows of perfectly placed chairs. By 1:45 p.m., nearly every seat was taken. Folks were laughing, snapping selfies, making small talk. Sabrina's side dominated the room. Local big shots, political friends, business partners, and a whole lot of relatives. My side was there too, smaller and quieter, kind faces tucked into the background. The plan was for me to stand at the altar with the officiant while the wedding party made their entrance. But when 1:50 p.m. rolled around, I was nowhere to be seen. The officiant, some friend of Douglas Langford, started glancing around, looking puzzled. Sabrina's dad checked his watch, frowning hard. My mom looked nervous, shifting in her seat. Carolyn, dressed in her stiff lilac suit, leaned toward the guests around her and whispered, "Where is Jake? Is he always this unreliable?" Of course. Any chance to knock me down a peg. Sabrina, still tucked away somewhere in the back, was probably on the verge of panic. But I wasn't there to see it. Instead, I stood hidden behind a curtain on the second-floor balcony, watching the crowd and feeling the tension start to build. At exactly 2:01 p.m., when the doors were supposed to open and the music was supposed to start, nothing happened. Just confused murmurs and shifting eyes. Perfect. Right on cue. I turned and headed back to the AV booth. Rick was waiting, hovering over the controls with a nervous look. When Rick saw me walk in, he gave me a nervous look. "Hey man, we're like 2 minutes behind. You good?" "Absolutely," I said, giving him a tight smile as I stepped up to the mic. My heart was pounding so hard I thought my ribs might crack. But between the adrenaline and the rage, I was steady enough. "Let's do this." I flipped on the mic, and my voice echoed across the ballroom. "Good afternoon, everyone." The room fell silent just like that. Heads turned, eyes scanning for me at the altar, but I wasn't there. Confusion swept through the crowd. Sabrina's dad stood up, searching the room. Her mom clutched her chest like she just felt something shift. "Hello," the officiant called out, clearly baffled. "Thank you all for being here today," I said calmly over the speakers. Inside, though, I was burning. There's been a small change of plans. Actually, there won't be a ceremony at all. Gasps rippled across the room like a wave. People started shifting in their seats, twisting around to find out where I was speaking from. Some stood up, eyes darting toward the sound system. Sabrina, still tucked away with her bridesmaids, must have been spiraling. Rick looked at me, wide-eyed. I gave him a nod. He fumbled with the flash drive and waited for my cue. "Before anyone gets too upset," I said, voice calm but firm, "I've got something to share with you all. Just a short video." "Rick, go ahead and roll it." The slideshow that had been looping, happy photos of me and Sabrina, suddenly cut out. The screen went black for a second. Then, grainy footage appeared. It was what I'd recorded less than 12 hours earlier. Sabrina and Derek in bed, caught in the act. Their voices were audible. The timestamp glowed clear in the corner. I made sure the moment Derek's face turned toward the camera was visible. He hadn't noticed me at the time, but it was enough to prove everything. I'd even zoomed in on the wall clock to lock in the time and date, just to make sure no one could question what happened. The room erupted. Cries of shock, gasps, a wave of stunned silence, followed by an explosion of whispered outrage. One of Sabrina's older relatives actually shrieked, "Oh, dear Lord!" Douglas Langford nearly fell backward. Carolyn's face twisted like she'd just bitten into something rotten. Somewhere in the building, Derek probably heard the uproar. Too late to stop it now, buddy. Even from the AV booth, I heard the sound of people running and shouting. The officiant stared helplessly at the screen, frozen. One of the bridesmaids wailed. From somewhere off to the side, someone yelled, "Turn that off." I let the footage loop for a solid 10 seconds. Long enough for the date stamp, the voices, the betrayal to sink into every single person's memory. Then I killed the feed. The screen went dark again, but the chaos didn't. People were panicking, talking over each other, trying to figure out what they just witnessed. The whole room was coming apart. Rick turned to me, face pale. "What the hell, man?" I didn't answer. I just stepped back from the mic and looked down. And there she was. Sabrina stood at the entrance in her wedding dress, eyes wide with horror. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, but none of it could cover up the sheer panic on her face. "Turn it off," Sabrina shrieked, her voice breaking with panic. She must have missed the worst of the footage, but judging by the looks on everyone's faces, she knew exactly what had been shown. Carolyn stormed toward the projector, stabbing her finger at the staff like it was their fault. "Who let this happen?" she snapped. Rick, still in the booth with me, looked like he wanted to disappear. He didn't even get a chance to answer before Douglas charged into the aisle, red-faced and furious, yelling loud enough to rattle the chandeliers. "Jake! Where is Jake?" He spun in place, eyes wild, guests backing away from him as if afraid of catching the scandal. Down in the crowd, my mother was crying, overwhelmed by the chaos. My dad stood beside her like a wall, eyes locked on the Langford, protective and alert. Some of Sabrina's family members had already started shrinking back, like they didn't want any part of the fallout. A woman near the front row fainted, and people scrambled to help her, calling for water. It was complete madness. Sabrina scanned the crowd, her eyes darting from face to face, dragging her gown like it weighed 100 pounds. Then she looked up. She spotted me on the second-floor balcony. I stepped into view, resting both hands on the railing, watching it all unfold below. One by one, heads turned and followed her gaze until every set of eyes was locked on me. It felt like I was center stage at the most twisted show in town. "What are you doing?" Sabrina screamed up at me, voice shaking. "You're not supposed to see me before the wedding, you coward." Even in the middle of this nightmare, she was worried about tradition. I couldn't help the bitter smirk that crept onto my face. "There is no wedding," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You made sure of that last night." She froze. Her face crumbled, eyes welling up. "Jake, please. Let's just talk about this." "Not in front of everyone." "Why not?" I fired back. "You didn't have a problem sleeping with my best friend. I think everyone here who spent time and money deserves to know why the wedding's canceled." Carolyn, face red and tight, pointed up at me. "You've ruined the Langford name in front of some of the most important people in this town. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for us?" I laughed once, dry and sharp. "Humiliating? No. Sabrina and Derek humiliated me. I'm just leveling the playing field." That's when the front of the room erupted again. Derek appeared, half-dressed in his tux, hair a mess, eyes wide with panic. "Jake, let's talk this out, man," he said, trying to walk toward the dais. I didn't wait. I stormed down the stairs and into the main room, heading straight for him. Sabrina scrambled to intercept me, but that ridiculous dress slowed her down. I pushed right past her like she wasn't even there. My whole body was shaking with rage. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. Derek looked like he was about to crumble. "It wasn't what it looked like," he said, stammering. "She was upset. I didn't want to hear another word. The images were burned into my mind. I stepped forward and slapped him across the face, hard enough that the sound echoed across the stunned crowd. Derek hit the floor with a groan. A collective gasp swept through the room. Sabrina shrieked, "Stop it! You're hurting him!" She dropped to her knees beside him, not caring that her dress was dragging on the floor. Carolyn cried out, voice high and shaking, "You monster!" attacking him in front of everyone. I pointed at him, still seething. "He's the monster, and so is your daughter. They made a fool of me behind my back. Now the world knows exactly who they are." The room fell quiet. So quiet, it felt like no one was even breathing. Sabrina looked up at me, her face soaked with tears. "Zake, I'm sorry, okay? Just stop." I turned to the crowd, most of them holding up phones now, filming every second. "Thanks for coming," I said, my voice heavy with sarcasm. "But there's no wedding today. Sorry if you were expecting a romantic ceremony." I paused, looking around one last time. "Instead, you got the truth." With that, I turned and walked out, throwing the double doors open with both hands. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. My parents followed behind me, stunned but standing tall. Sabrina screamed my name, but I didn't stop. Back at the apartment, my adrenaline was still in overdrive. My mom came inside with me, shaken and tearful. "Jake, are you sure?" she asked softly once we sat down. "Was all of that real?" I nodded and showed her the original clip, uncut, time-stamped, undeniable. She stared at the screen, eyes filling up. "Oh, dear God," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so sorry." My dad stood behind her, silent. I could tell he wanted to say something, but didn't have the words. "You did what you had to do, son," my dad said, giving my shoulder a firm pat. But I could see the pain in his eyes. "We lost a lot on this wedding, but better that than watching you live a lie." I thanked both of them and told them to go get some rest. They left only after making it crystal clear they still loved me, no matter what. And even with all that had happened, part of me still felt a sting of guilt. They had to sit through that disaster. After everything they gave up to help pay for it, they watched it all blow apart in front of 100 people. But I didn't see another way. Quietly calling it off wouldn't have given me peace. I needed the truth in the open. That night, after they left, I started boxing up Sabrina's things. I went through the closet and drawers, packed up her clothes, the endless pairs of shoes, all her makeup, even the little decorations she'd scattered around the apartment like she owned the place. I labeled every box with thick black marker, neat and precise, just like she always liked things. Around midnight, I rented a small U-Haul online, loaded everything in, and drove it straight to her parents' mansion. It sat behind tall gates, way too fancy for what any of them actually deserved. A whole monument to their bloated sense of importance. The security guard at the gate recognized me. When he saw the trailer, his face stiffened. "Everything okay, Mr. Walker?" "Just returning Sabrina's stuff," I said flatly. He nodded and let me through. I parked under their massive portico, the kind with stone columns and a heavy mahogany door that looked like it belonged to a courthouse, not a house. Felt like the building itself was judging me. My anger was still there, low and steady, but mostly I just felt calm now, like the adrenaline had run its course, and I was finally settling into the aftermath. I stacked the boxes neatly at the front door, knocked once hard, and headed back to the truck. As I was pulling away, I saw a light come on inside. Probably Douglas or Carolyn getting out of bed to see who dared disturb their castle at 1 a.m. Let them open the door and find their little princess's life boxed and delivered. She could go move back in her childhood bedroom for all I cared. The next morning, I was yanked from sleep by pounding on my front door, sharp, angry knocks. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard his voice. "Open up. We know you're in there." Douglas Langford. I threw on a t-shirt and opened the door to find the whole trio standing there, Sabrina, Douglas, and Carolyn, all looking like they were ready to declare war. Sabrina's eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was a mess. Douglas, in his crisp tailored suit, stood tall with his fists clenched at his sides. And Carolyn, she had this expensive-looking coat on and was holding a thick stack of papers like she was serving court documents. "We need to talk about compensation," Douglas said coldly. I blinked, then let out a tired, dry laugh. Compensation? For what? Carolyn shoved the papers at me. The wedding, obviously. We invested tens of thousands into that event. The venue, catering, hotel blocks, travel arrangements, we covered a lot. And your little stunt ruined all of it. I glanced at the papers, itemized receipts, numbers scrawled everywhere. You do remember your daughter slept with Derek the night before our wedding, right? I said, looking up. I'm pretty sure that's what ruined it. Sabrina's face twisted in anger. You ambushed me in front of everyone. You could have just canceled it quietly if you had a problem. I had every right, I shot back. The fury started bubbling again. You and Derek betrayed me. I just let people see who you really are. Douglas's voice rose. Don't act like the victim. We paid for half that wedding. Your parents paid the other half. But the real cost went way beyond that. We want some of it back. 20,000, Carolyn said sharply. That's only a portion of what we lost. I stared at them, stunned. You seriously think I owe you 20 grand? After what she did? Carolyn's lips curled. You humiliated us in front of clients, donors, public officials, people who shape reputations in this town. You don't get to walk away without consequences. I almost laughed right in their faces. The nerve. Let's not forget, I said. None of this would have happened if Sabrina had just kept her legs closed the night before the wedding. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You jerk, she snapped. Maybe if you'd actually been around, if you cared about my needs. I cut her off with a dry, bitter snort. Oh, so now it's my fault? I pointed toward the hallway. Get out. Both of you. I'm not giving you a cent. Douglas stepped in closer, tried to loom over me. Do you even know who you're messing with? He growled. About influence in this town. Yeah, I said calmly. You've mentioned that. I leaned in just a little. But you seem to be forgetting I've got that video. With your daughter's face and a timestamp. Clear as day. So if you want to start throwing your weight around, be my guest. We'll let the whole town, your donors, your colleagues, watch the raw footage. Then we'll see who's humiliated. They stared at me, Douglas's rage simmering, his jaw clenched. But he didn't move. He knew I had him. Sabrina switched gears, stepping forward with tears in her eyes, trying the emotional route. Jake, please, we used to love each other. We built something together. Don't throw it all away over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, my voice shaking now. No, it wasn't a slip. It wasn't an accident. You made a choice. I looked her dead in the eye. I saw it. I recorded it. There's no coming back from that. Now leave. Douglas's posture sagged as reality finally sank in. He had no leverage left. Carolyn gave a sharp, dismissive sniff. You'll regret this. I shrugged. Not nearly as much as I would have regretted marrying your daughter. They stormed off, slamming the door so hard behind them it rattled the whole frame. I leaned back against the door, let my head hit the wood. The wave of exhaustion that hit me was heavy, but underneath, it was something else. Relief. It was over. No wedding. No fiancée. No best friend. It didn't feel like victory, not really. But it wasn't defeat either. It was something in between. Hollow, sure, but honest. Word spread fast. People started reaching out. Some to show support, some shocked, a few quietly judging. I stuck to the same story. How I caught them, why I did what I did. Some said it was harsh. Some called it legendary. I didn't bother arguing. Derek texted me once. Dude, I'm sorry, but you gotta understand. I didn't answer. I didn't care. He lost his job not long after. Something about lying to a client. Fitting. My parents were torn up about the money, but grateful I'd avoided a disaster of a marriage. I heard my dad tell my mom, better we lose some cash than watch Jake lose himself. I promised them I'd pay them back. Every cent. The Langford, of course, went into spin mode. Tried to paint me as unstable, jealous, dramatic. But the guests had seen the truth with their own eyes. No amount of damage control could clean that up. Their name took a hit. Sabrina was disgraced. She bounced around between friends for a while, maybe even crawled back to Derek. I didn't bother checking. I moved into a smaller place. Cheaper, quieter. Threw myself into work and focused on rebuilding. The heartbreak didn't vanish overnight, but anger gave me momentum when nothing else would. Eventually, the drama faded. The whispers quieted down. Life moved on, but I kept the clip. just in case anyone ever tried to rewrite what really happened.